Alright, everyone out there in mandolin land, Mike Heading here. I've got another bluegrass mandolin lesson for you today. I had a request from someone out there if I could talk a little bit more about the bluegrass chop, and more specifically how it fits in with the bass and the guitar. So I'm going to break down this lesson. I've got 5 basic bluegrass songs I'm going to play the practice tracks to, and then talk about kind of getting into the weeds, getting a little bit more into the depth about how to really get a solid bluegrass chop. So I'm going to assume that you know some of the basic chop chord shapes. If you don't, you can check out another lesson I did called Basic Bluegrass Chop Chords that'll break all those down. But I'm going to assume that you know the chords for this lesson. And for this lesson, we're going to talk about timing and getting a good chop sound and figuring out whether to do just straight chop only or start filling it up more, switching between chord shapes. Again, kind of getting into more stylistically, how do we keep the beat? What's the role of the mandolin in the bluegrass band? And how do we sync up with the bass player? So that's what this lesson is going to be all about. And if you're watching the preview of this lesson, you can head over to my website, MikeHeadingMusic.com, and grab the full-length lesson. You'll get access to watch all the videos, and you can download the tabs and the practice tracks. All right, here's Improving Your Bluegrass Chop. All right, so let's start breaking down this lesson on improving your bluegrass chop. So I'm going to kind of assume for this lesson that you know the basic chop shapes. So if you don't know the basic chop shapes, you can check out another lesson I did called Basic Bluegrass Chop Chords that'll break down each of these shapes in detail. But I want to kind of move a little bit past breaking down the basic shapes and get a little bit more into the nuances of how to improve your bluegrass chop. So again, we're going to use the basic bluegrass chop shapes, this big chord, this C chord shape moved up, and then we're going to use also our bar chord shape, and then move to the middle strings as well. So those are the shapes I'm going to use to start. Okay, and let's start with an easy bluegrass song, Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms, in the key of A. So we're going to use A, D, and E. So A, our first chord is A, and then E, then back to A, D, E, A. So a very basic bluegrass chord progression called the 1, 4, and 5. So our 1 chord is A, the root. Our D is called the 4 chord, and E is our 5 chord. So very common chord progression in bluegrass. You might have heard of a 1, 4, 5 progression. Super common in bluegrass, and a very good progression to know in multiple keys because you're going to be playing a lot of 1, 4, 5s if you like bluegrass. So let's go over to the practice track really quick and just listen to the bass part first. And let's first listen to how the chop fits in. So I'm going to play the Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms track at 80 beats a minute with just the bass to start.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So let's just listen to the bass for a second. So remember, the bass is playing on 1 and 3, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that'd be the first thing, is just hearing that timing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Because the chop's on the 2 and the 4, remember. So here we go. Let's chop. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here comes E. A. D. That'd be 1 time through. Let's do it again. E, A, D, E, A. So that'd be just the straight 2/4 chop with nothing, no fill in between. So that works really good. I use the straight simple chop usually in busier jam sessions. So if there's a lot of competing sounds going on, I'll really revert to just that super simple 2/4 chop. I won't even play on the 1 and 3 like a pick chop. I might do at a slower speed, and I'll break that down in a second. But remember, again, the more competing sounds you have in a jam or a band, the less you're probably going to want to play. You're going to want to make room for everyone else. It's also a really good way to keep the tempo up on a faster song is just stick to that really simple chop. So what am I doing there to get that sound? I like to let a little bit of the chord ring out, and this is where different mandolin players play this a little bit differently. Some people completely mute the strings, so I'm not even pushing down. Some people do complete chord sound. I kind of like a little bit of both. So I like hearing a little bit of the chord and then cutting off the pressure. It'll look like I'm squeezing in the video, but I have the pressure of the strings down, and then I let off. And what we really want to focus on is letting the bass have a space and the mandolin chop have a space. So it's bass, chop, and you want to cut your chop off to make room for that next bass note on the 1 or the 3. So boom, chop. Okay. And you can experiment with, again, if you don't like that chord sound, but I really like a little bit of the chord sound, and I'd recommend that. I don't think it's very musical to just do that, you're not really playing in a key at that point. You can basically do any chord. So I like getting a little bit of the chord to ring out. And you really want to find that right note value so you're not letting it ring out too much. Otherwise, it's going to kind of run together with the bass part, and it's going to sound like you're kind of slowing the song down a little bit. So again, really cut off that chop. The other thing I'd recommend is just be really powerful and confident with your chop. And that takes a little bit of practice, obviously. But you're really controlling the band and the tempo with your mandolin chop. So you've got a lot of responsibility and power in the band to control the tempo. So remember, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So really make sure you're making eye contact with the bass player, making eye contact with the other band members or jam sessions, and really leading that tempo with your chop. If you're slowing everything down, it's going to make the bass player slow down because their next bass note is going to be based on where you played your chop. Vice versa, if you're speeding everything up, the bass player is going to have to speed up as well. So the mandolin player has a ton of power in a bluegrass band to control the tempo. And that's really your responsibility as the mandolin player in the band or the jam session to control the tempo. So let's go back and try the practice tracks again, this time with just bass, and I will practice doing a little bit more fill. So maybe I'll start playing on the 1 and 3. I'll start adding a little bit of an up strum, and I'll do this a little bit on a slower tempo, or again in a situation where there's not as many people, okay? And let's add the guitar as well, just to hear how the guitar fits in there.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
A. I'm trying to keep my chop short even though I'm filling it. See, once you get it down, you can really go back and forth between just straight chop and then filling it up. My right hand is doing the same movement every time. I'm just choosing whether to grab the strings on the way up or just add a little bit more fill. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, so that's what I'm doing there. And I'd probably use a little bit more of that fill on a slower tempo, right? So 80 beats a minute is slower. So you have more space to fill. On a super fast song, which we'll break down in just a second, again, I will play less fill just because it, at a higher tempo, it's just busier and fills it up a little bit more than you need to. Alright, let's try this 80 beats per minute practice track one more time. I've added back the guitar, and let's work on doing the straight chop with the bass and guitar, and then also switching between maybe filling it up a little bit more. So maybe adding a pick on beats 1 and 3, or adding some upstrokes. There's a lot of things you can do once you get the timing down. Remember, we're always still thinking 1, 2, 3, 4. We're still always chopping on 2 and 4, even if we fill it up. So let's try it again. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I'll do straight chop to start. E. A. Here comes D. Start filling it up. Here comes E. A. Here comes D. E. Back to A. Let's switch to our other bar chord shape. A. So you can hear how I did that there. So again, I might fill it up a little bit more in an ensemble that has less people. So if it's a smaller group, you have to take more of the rhythm. Also, if it's a slower tempo, I might fill up the sound a little bit more just to help me keep the rhythm. You know, if it's really slow, 1, 2, 3, you know, sometimes it helps to fill it up a little bit more. Okay, let's take that same song and crank up the speed to 120 beats a minute. Alright, so let's start again with just bass. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
E. A. D. E. E. A. Let's try adding the guitar back.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.